Hi everyone, welcome to the virtual FinTech Fair today and tomorrow, broad across the entire world, but from Hong Kong here. My name is Mehdi Swidi, and I'm really glad to have the panel discussion on how is COVID-19 reshaping use of AI and big data in financial services. Today we have an exciting panel discussion with four really great experts who will share with us their insight and the different trends about AI and big data over the past months. So I would like to let those great speakers to start their introduction for 1 or 2 minutes with you. Maybe we can start with Monica first.
Thank you so much, Mehdi. I'm Monica D'Souza. I head product management for Comviva Financial Solutions for mobile financial services. I've had background with PayPal and MasterCard previously. Therefore, really excited to both be here with the panel and be talking about the future of both fintech as well as financial services in terms of use of these technologies, which has always been pervasive, but they've assumed more importance now after COVID-19. Thank you so much. Mehdi, are you able to listen in? I think your picture is also frozen. Are we having any technical difficulties? Are the rest able to hear me and see?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Likewise.
Yeah, I think Mehdi seems to have some technical difficulty here. He's left. Maybe we can give it a minute before he comes back.
Should we continue the introduction?
Yeah, please, I think we should, in the interest of time. Yeah, would you like to go next?
Yeah, why don't you go, Yao Jing?
Sure, yeah, so hi, thanks. So hi, everyone, my name is Yao Jing. You can call me YJ. I'm from this fintech company called One Connect. We are part of the Chinese Ping An group. We sell technology to basically to banks and financial service companies. We have tech products like lending platforms, core banking systems, financial cloud, etc. So I am the part of the team run the business in Southeast Asia. I take care of the Singapore and the Malaysia markets. Very happy to be here today. Yeah, William, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everybody. William Genovese. I'm with Huawei Technologies here in Shenzhen, China, and I'm Vice President Corporate Strategy of Banking and Financial Markets. And I lead our global financial services strategy across 4 divisions, focusing on next generation digital financial services, which is very, very relevant for the topic of this discussion, COVID-19 and beyond.
Hi, sorry, I had an issue with my VPN, so maybe we can. Did we finish the introduction of every speaker?
No, just me left. I'm Rizwan Aziz. I'm the president of the FinTech Association of Malaysia. On a professional basis, I'm also the country director for a remittance company called World Remit. But during COVID-19, we saw a multi-pronged impact, especially from the industry perspective and from many companies and how they deal with this. Some were successful and some were not. And happy to share later in terms of what had happened and what lesson we learned throughout the COVID-19. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So we can start the panel discussion with a couple of questions. I would like to ask all of you one simple question to start the discussion and open the floor to more questions later on. How COVID has been referred to be one of the world's largest change management exercise recently. And since January, we have worked in this kind of new normal. So I would like to see with you, what was the different organizational learnings to date? And maybe we can start with Monica first for this question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mehdi. Actually, everybody has described COVID-19 as a black swan moment, but I think this was supposed to happen specifically as far as digital transformation is concerned, and what we could have done in a couple of years' time has been accelerated in a couple of months. As far as financial services and specifically mobile solutions are concerned, there were concerns about both safety and security associated from the health perspective. So therefore, we moved from fraudulent security of transactions to actually physical security of transactions, thereby leading to a surge of contactless-based solutions. And we've heard various surveys which have said that the contactless rates, both in terms of transactions as well as terminalization, has increased massively. But this is only on the carded side, and the question really remains as to whether users will take and transform their consumer behavior habits into accepting cashless modes of payments. And therefore, keeping in mind this particular trend that we are seeing, we're obviously moving into the space where we'll be able to address both on the issuing as well as on the acceptance side, both mobile as well as mobile merchant as well as consumer solutions. As you know, Comviva is one of the leading mobile financial services providers for emerging economies, specifically in the recharge and voucher management space. And again, there with COVID-19, it acted as an accelerator for us to be able to fast track some of the programs associated with, for example, being able to create and scale the reseller network associated with these solutions. Therefore, everybody is now a reseller. And of course, there have been other major performance enhancements that have also taken place, because at this particular point in time, innovation is not about leading and catering to new needs. It's about catering to needs that have arisen, specifically rising from health concerns, and therefore being able to create things which are better, faster, and cheaper. And keeping that in mind, I think that right now the major focus is on performance, which obviously comes at a cost, but how do you balance this cost against safety and security measures that need to be in place as transactions are hitting the roof in terms of digital adoption. But this also leads to the downside, which is that not all of us are educated. Specifically, how do you really educate people who've never used digital before and never used mobile solutions before and really use the mobile device specifically for calling purposes? So how do you really transform their habits and behaviors into cashless as well as adoption of these small payment solutions, but help them along the adoption curve for digital in general? And apart from that, our company is also right now working on many spaces in both AI and ML in the transformative effect that it has, both in terms of digital adoption and transformation of banking and telco domains. But more importantly, how can we use the massive amount of information that we already have about for both users and merchants, and to be able to actually create something meaningful out of it, but keeping in mind safety and security standards? Because the problem right now is we don't have many data frameworks which are in place, except of course the EU. So the question is, you need to operate in a gambit whereby you don't compromise any of these data standards, but at the same time are able to cater to the rising needs of users who are leaving a large digital footprint all across the world. And that's some of the areas that we are looking at right now.
Thank you very much. William, could you share with us the different learnings that you had over the last months?
Sorry, Mehdi, I didn't get your question.
Oh, I just asked William to continue the discussion with the learnings. No worries.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mehdi. Yeah, I mean, the focus for us and the impact in terms of change management has really been probably a bit of internal and external, okay, in terms of the impact of COVID-19 and how we're changing as an organization, as well as further adjusting our solutions for our customers. As many of you on the webinar and the panel may know, Huawei has a number of divisions, okay, that we sell solutions and products into financial services. The longest running division has been our enterprise business group, where we sell infrastructure. However, our other divisions, consumer, we are now the #1 world smartphone manufacturer in terms of volume for Q2 2020, right in the midst of COVID-19. So we've surpassed Samsung right now. A lot of power in that phone, okay, in terms of artificial intelligence. We have our own system on a chip. We're launching a credit card this year as well, backed by Union Pay, very, very similar to Apple's credit card. So there's a lot of fintech innovation that's now being shifted to the consumer finance area or consumer device area, okay? And as such, internally, we're transforming to move more in a horizontal direction to serve not only the back end or traditional financial services provider economy, i.e. the banks, investment banks, insurers, their infrastructure and cloud, but connecting that to the front end or the real economy that's being impacted by COVID-19. So allowing consumers to consume payments, credit lending, and the storing of and protection of financial assets, deposits, insurtech and wealth management robo-advisors, all from the palm of their hand, okay, and the smartphone. So there's a connection play there and a paradigm shift. And that's forced us to kind of move in a direction that I've been outlining for the last 4 years since I came here. All of this power under the roof of Huawei to connect the real economy with the market economy has played out now. COVID-19 has been the black swan or gray swan that's bringing this to bear. And we're having to shift now more from a change management perspective internally to align horizontally, where before we had a consumer division that really didn't care so much about the market economy. Okay, they were selling devices. And if the consumer used those financial services or fintechy oriented devices, fine. But from a total solution perspective, that was not connected internally. Okay, these were separate P&Ls, separate divisions, almost separate enterprises or businesses under one roof. Well, all of this has changed. Okay, and the consumers are not so much going to the traditional providers anymore, they're going into the palm of their hand. So that's forced us internally to start looking at shared business models, shared KPIs, potentially shared solution portfolios, okay, and metrics. And that's been the big shift that's gone on right now for us. And I see that continuing to do so.
Thank you very much. We had already two good answers, so maybe we can continue with you, Rizwan, for these points. So what was the learnings for you as the president of the FinTech Association of Malaysia, and what did you see on the market?
Fantastic. Thank you, Mehdi. I think one of the things that I want to touch is in terms of a macro in terms of policy, because as a FinTech association, we also advise and be consulted by government agencies. And one of the things that we saw is government of the day, or any government for that matter, is struggling to make good of the last mile connection, because I think government probably is the last organization given the ecosystem in financial services that has adopted AI or big data analytics. So what we did was we introduced a simple app in terms of them collecting data, making sure that they know how to profile it, introduce to them also certain standards in terms of managing cyber securities and understanding the end-to-end value chain in terms of government, consumer, as well as the business. Because if these connections are not clear, and this is where I think we would have a problem in terms of leaving a policy gap in the middle. Businesses are really happy to help the consumer. Consumer are really happy to have the network and the devices in their hand, but the knowledge and the policy that regulates the behavior and the market conduct is not there. So this would lead to a lot of problems. So what we have done in terms of managing not just financial services is also making sure that the big data and AI is also helping the enablers and the facilitators to understand that this data can be also used for health monitoring purposes as well. So this is, I think, one of the biggest micro and macro aspect that we have seen. And as an industry, we are very happy to see that this issue has been taken well by the policymakers and the government agencies in terms of helping financial services to be delivered to the right consumer level at the right time, as well as making sure that the data collected are not abused or able to be stolen by unscrupulous parties. So that's, I think, one of the biggest impact that we see as a FinTech association. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. Now, our last speaker, Yao Jing, could you share with us the different things that you have seen over the past months about change management and the learnings that you had in your organization? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. In terms of organization, we are a company originated in China. And we set our business in South Asia, I think two years ago. A lot of our team and our developers or R&D research team are still sitting in China. So we have been doing remote, we have a remote working model anyway, even before the COVID. Since the COVID breakout, we have to forced to work from home for a lot of our staff. Actually, that's very similar to many tech companies like Google, Microsoft, and I think for our engineers, they have been able to adopt the model pretty well. We have seen some challenges when work on big projects. People are not able to have easy discussion, sit together, and have a quick discussion. Sometimes people rely more on remote tools like emails, chat tools. Affects the productivity a little bit when you come to teamwork. But otherwise, I think the business are going quite well. On the other hand, I think for our industry, this COVID definitely have accelerated our customers I would say agenda to go moving from offline to online. So we sell banks, and we help banks to do digital lending, online, pure online lending. We help banks to provide new generation of core banking solution to launch digital banks. We have seen a spike in demand in terms of at least two areas so far this year. Number one is for eKYC. So, also a bit of coincidence, some countries like Malaysia, for instance, just rolled out the eKYC guidelines this year. So we do see, big banks, are moving to doing eKYC, and which is really in time for the COVID lockdown. Then besides eKYC, we also see more and more inquiries on remote selling tools. So, for example, now we are doing a remote webinar, right? But my customers also want to do the same when they sell insurance products, when they sell wealth products, right? They are trying to figure out how do they sell products through video call. And obviously, they cannot rely on external tools like Zoom or even WebEx, because those are not designed for bank purpose, right? They might not have the security standard, or some banks even require on-premise deployment of those solutions. So banks are looking at the tools to help them to do remote sales. There's also requests on how do I explain products to my customers. So can I have when my sales agents explain the product to my customers, can they also illustrate the product features online, and customers can even fill in a form together with the sales agent through a web interface, right? And how can we deliver such experience without require the customer to download that app? For example, I have a lot of requests around can we do everything on web, but not doing via app, because the web experience is much simpler for end customers. So we do see immediate demand in these two areas, remote sales and eKYC. But in the longer term, my customers are all start to seriously look into how do I distribute loans, wealth products online. And also to us, the short-term impact is also because of COVID, some of the banks are dealing with potential bad loans, etc. So the budget is a little bit affected. So I would say long-term is a positive push for the digitization. Short-term, the budget to do this are a bit impacted because of the economic downturn. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think we will come back later on the customer side and discuss a bit more about it. But before we can discuss about this, we had 4 answers here touching on how COVID is a major catalyst for change. And we touch about different aspects. But one of the things that we discussed a bit was especially on digitalization and the use on AI and data. So maybe we can start with Rizwan to ask, how do you see COVID-19 impacting digital agenda and also the use of AI and data for most of the customer needs, and to ensure operational resilience or other application with this data and AI capabilities?
Thank you, Mehdi. I think the impact of or the result of COVID-19 we have seen in 5 main areas, which is on talent, on the narrative of companies, on the investment that they need to put in, on the technology relevancy that they have, and as well as in terms of internal governance, risk, and compliance. So this is where when we look at COVID-19 as a catalyst or as a big change management agent, we notice that focus have already shifted and accelerated towards making sure that customer needs in the new norm are served in a more efficient and more secure manner using technology, in terms of how to companies like technology providers like Huawei, like Yao Jing there, in terms of how you actually provide services in reshaping the expectation and consumer behavior. Secondly, a lot of consumers are now pivoting towards digital for the first time. I've seen it in my own company where we have spike of almost 400% in new activation for the last 3 months. And this is something that also comes with certain risks of how do we educate these people in terms of making sure that their behavior is in line with certain expectation. And this is also where we need to understand when we collect information and when we do analyze this information and try to use AI, they need to understand their right as a consumer on how this information will be used. And to give you certain example, certain consumer that is living in rural areas are not well versed in English, for example, are very, very vulnerable. And you can see a spike also in scams in terms of because they are the first time user in a digital platform. And this is where there's also a very big need for us to do digital and financial literacy push, not just in terms of pushing product and services, because consumer who doesn't understand, I think you guys listened to the previous session just now talking about trust. A lot of customers do not trust digital platform providers. So COVID-19 actually created a lot of new activation, but there's also a lot of dropout thereafter because the trust is not there. We don't earn their trust by just pushing them technology, but we need to also follow with a proper digital and financial literacy for them to stay and earn their trust. And this is also talking about consumer behavior in the industry that we saw in Malaysia and throughout ASEAN. Customer services has been redefined. It's no longer about just taking calls, but also trying to solve their problem end to end. And this is where, when I sum it up, this is talking about how you cluster and reclassify big data that you get and able to come out with artificial intelligence that's focusing on clients' need, as per how I said it just now, in terms of their needs on the product and services, their need in terms of giving them trust and confidence, and their needs in terms of learning about how digital and financial literacy could add value to their participation in the digital economy. So I think that is something that we need to think about at the back of whatever business that we do, so that consumer could continue to put and give their trust to us. And I think this is something that I'm sure everybody is keeping aware of, but I'm just reiterating that so that it could be highlighted as one of the, I think, key learnings from what happened throughout the pandemic. Over to you, Mehdi.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask the same question to Monica. How did you see the impact on digital agenda, and how the change being driven by the customer needs during that COVID-19 situation?
Thank you so much, Mehdi. I think I'm going to dovetail into what Ridwan just said about digital and financial literacy. What we've seen is that as you're going into the hinterlands and you're really, touching consumers much beyond the top of the pyramid, there's a lot happening in the space right now associated with the ability and the ease of adoption of consumer-based payments. But I think they're not really touching the surface as far as how do you make that happen, because the demand is always going to be there, but the supply side problem has not been solved. Therefore, there have been a lot of government-related measures, both on the policy front as well as adoption, to be able to drive SMEs, for example, into accepting digital modes of payment. Now, this is only on the India side where you've seen a massive rate of adoption ever since demonetization happened. And even in other parts of the world, wherever there has been a major crisis or an event, that has always led to the issuance / acquiring side of the equation needing to be balanced with each other. But what that has actually created is, when we're talking about literacy, literacy does not mean just usage. It also means how do you sustain that usage and engagement much beyond your first activation or your first usage point. And I think that's where we are all struggling, because no matter how you do this, you need an ecosystem play in order to be able to drive this literacy campaign well across and be able to scale that, so that you start seeing sustained digital activity rates all throughout, and COVID doesn't again become one of those black swan moments leading to huge opportunity, but unrealized opportunity because of our own failures. And this leads me to the most important point that I think we need to address as payment services and financial services professionals, which is about digitization of processes. So I know that AI and ML and big data has been in existence since forever. But the question is, how have we really used it, and what have we offered to an end consumer or even to a customer as a technology service provider? Let's take the example of chatbots. You made it a lot easier to service customers, but if you ask a customer, an actual end consumer, do you feel that you have received the customer service that you're used to? The answer would be no, because it's very easy to digitize a process and say we are very high on the digital transformation scale and we've achieved our KPI and our metric for the year. But the question is, if you're not really serving a consumer need, then eventually not only is it going to impact your NPS, but consumers are going to stop accepting digital because it's much easier to go back to cash and to go back to means whereby there is less friction. And on one side, we're trying to balance friction with security, and we're trying to remove friction in consumer-based payments, which are becoming faster, better, etc. And with no step up, no OTPs, the ability to be able to use device fingerprinting with that nice little device that we have in our hands, which can be anything between $30 to like hundreds of dollars. But it offers you a huge data footprint. And that digital footprint is where the parameters that if were to be used correctly, and of course within the framework of privacy and other security guidelines, would give you a massive amount of information about a user. Therefore, making sure that the user does not get defrauded in the entire process, and there are chains and mechanisms and safeguards in place to be able to trace back these transactions and offer the same amount of security that they are used to in transactions offline. And I think those basic areas, as well as, of course, lending, which is very big on our agenda as well. Reason being that there are a lot of firms that have, from our particular portfolio have actually branched out, looking at only the lending side, because as if capital is in short supply, there isn't going to be digitization. Not everybody is going to have a pay later product. So you now have a proliferation of buy now, pay later products that have again led to a whole technology platform related build, which is required in order to be able to support these processes from the merchant as well as from the consumer side. And last but not the least, AI has been in existence forever. We've not used AI to its optimal advantage, but really it's time that we started looking at pattern generation and identification, both on the consumer side as well as on how devices are being able to use these patterns to be able to create information from them, not just use it and just let it lie within those boxes within our siloed environments, but to be able to use it also for the ecosystem play. And therefore, I see a lot of partnerships coming in play, where we are going to leverage off our collective strengths instead of trying to build everything on our own. And this year is going to be about consolidation at both the cost level as well as on the employee side, to be able to create better, but not at the cost that we are normally used to.
Really interesting. Thank you very much. I think about our two first speakers, it was a lot about trust as well, and the word came a lot. So I would like to have the view of William here from Huawei. What is the perspective of the digital agenda, and what can you supplement from the two first speakers about the customer needs and ensure that operational resilience is still on? Thank you.
Yeah, kind of going back to what all of the speakers said, the first two, and the overall theme of our panel as well. and what's going on and what I said in terms of our shifting strategy. Our strategy is really based upon three key pillars: digital and mobile financial services at the top of the pyramid in terms of the uppermost piece or segment. And then that's kind of supported by open platforms, okay? Open APIs, starting with infrastructure. So your infrastructure needs to enable data sharing, not only across islands of compute, networking, and storage in your data center, okay, but as well as outside your four walls in the ecosystem that's very much liquid. And as financial services becomes ubiquitous and embedded, it's not only offered through traditional providers, it's on e-commerce, it's in retail, it's in you know, every possible industry vertical now it's become embedded. So to enable that, you need to securely have open platforms in terms of an ecosystem from within your data center through private cloud to hybrid cloud, and then multi-cloud setups in multiple jurisdictions and regions of the world. And then what's kind of fueling the digitalization and intelligent connectivity is AI from the edge through the network and into the cloud. So those are the three pieces: digital financial services through mobile devices supported by open platforms and artificial intelligence. Underpinning that, okay, so if you look at the picture in your mind, what I've just described is what you see above the waterline if it's an iceberg. Okay, so what's under the waterline, okay, in terms of security and data integrity? Well, there you have IoT and blockchain and big data, okay, and we have all of those platforms as well that we offer customers. So we're not so much, you know, picking on blockchain as an example, developing blockchain financial services applications, but we see that as a trust fabric from edge through networks into the cloud and infrastructure overall. So our blockchain service, as an example, is based on Hyperledger. We're also partners with R3, but we're exploring blockchain application and usage, for example, to put under mobile money. So blockchain payments and a number of use areas. We're part of the BCOS blockchain consortium with WeBank, okay, and JD.com and some other players in China, okay, and the Chinese blockchain service. So this is all about data integrity and trust from edge through networks and into the clouds and across enterprises, okay. So that's the big shift, okay. And as consumers are in lockdown, they're doing everything from their mobile device in terms of financial services and the consumption model. That data needs to be shared securely across multi-channel contexts. It's no longer about omni-channel. Okay, just because a traditional provider offers a banking product to the mobile device or through the internet browser, the branch is almost, you know, irrelevant in these days where people can't get to the branch. Okay, you know, they need to transact across multiple industry platforms in a multi-channel context. So that's what we're enabling, and that's where the big shift has occurred based on the technology enablers that I've kind of outlined. So.
Really crystal clear. Thanks a lot for sharing all those points with us and make it really easy to understand. I will ask the same question to you as well, Yao Jing. What do you think about the customer needs? How do you ensure the operation side, but also how COVID-19 impact your agenda previously? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. As I said earlier, so for our business side, mostly you know, eKYC, online fulfillment of online sales, digital fulfillment of financial products, lending, loans, wealth management products. We see more and more demand for our customers. It takes a while for the banks to deliver that experience. So we will see it's happening you know, across Southeast Asia, different countries in the coming years. It takes probably 1 or 2 years for banks to deliver something, right? But the banks already started doing that. We also see, you know, because of COVID lockdown, there's a lot of demand on e-commerce. So you see, you know, the people buying stuff online. A lot of my bank customers, you know, especially in some of the developing countries like Philippines, Indonesia, some of the issues they face is not all their customers have a debit card or nor do they have a credit card, right? The credit card penetration is extremely low. Even debit card is quite low here. So, but then, you know, those, their customers not only require a digital bank or digital virtual account, but they will also require a virtual card in order for them to buy things online. So I think with the COVID, we also see, you know, a faster adoption of course, all the digital wallets, this new payment method, but also, you know, a lot of customers are looking to getting their first debit card or virtual debit card or virtual credit card to do online shopping at this point of time. Yeah, hand back to you.
Thank you very much. I would like just to continue a bit on the discussion of business development. So how is the impact of COVID-19 on your clients? Did you see some change on the way that you collaborate with them? We spoke about eKYC, payment solutions, but as you focus more on the banking, how do you see the integration of new technology and fintech products for them and also for you? Still for you, Yao Jing.
Yeah, so in terms of integration, I think that earlier, you know, we talk about ecosystems. So ecosystem is a kind of you know, a very new, not too new, but banks have been talking about it for a couple of years. It's a concept not difficult to understand, but it's actually quite difficult to do with the current bank's infrastructure or architecture of the what they have. So what the important thing in order for you to offer ecosystem or integrate with the external ecosystems, you need to have an open API infrastructure, right? You need to have a layer where you know you can you're able to have API calls, so the customers can, let's say, you know, customers can order a taxi in the Grab app, right? But can they buy a wealth product or can they borrow money from the Grab app? I mean, it seems to be easy, but actually for the banks to be able to deliver their products through the Grab app, they need to have APIs to allow the Grab app to call the banking you know, systems to approve and disperse a loan, right? And that is not that easy to do for a lot of my bank customers in South Asia because their system do not have that API layer. So I think a lot of my customers right now, they're looking to how they upgrade the legacy systems so as they are able to provide that API layer. And that's also is a fundamental technology for you to have open banking. So even though the open banking regulation in South Asia has been quite, you know, it's not being enforced by the regulator, right? But I think with the banks start to putting APIs in their cost stack, right? You will see more and more a possibility to have distribute banking products through the bank's ecosystem partners in the coming 2-3 years.
Thanks a lot. We'd like to ask a question now to William. So we discussed previously about product, but also about change in the organization. And I would like to ask you about the shape of organization, especially about teams and organization structure where the skills and capabilities are located. So how was the impact on your operating model for Huawei and for your talent strategy? Did you have to, for example, create new sprint to deliver a full experience for your employee to work remotely in a couple of days? Did you make some change early in January to continue to do BAU with your teams as well? And what was the focus maybe on AI and data?
Yeah, I mean,
thank you.
You know, kind of approaching that in a couple of pieces. So most of our employees are in mainland China, okay, being a Chinese company, but we do have international operations across all divisions, and we're in 70 plus countries globally. However, we're also deemed or classified as an essential industry in China. Okay, so when the virus first broke out back in late January, February, okay, our operations were kind of mandated to not shut down as long as possible, okay, and get people back in the office with the strict controls that have been in place by the Chinese government for the virus control, first starting in Wuhan and then branching out to the rest of the country. So I was back physically in the office at the end of February, and I have been. There has been no working remote or working from home. Okay, but I will say, you know, and when I do say this and communicate this, I get all kinds of reactions in terms of people's faces and reacting. What do you mean you've been back already? That's kind of crazy. It's unhealthy. Not really. I was pleasantly surprised. Okay, and in the sense that, you know, the controls are so strict. Okay, in terms of thermal imaging, masks at all times, you know, 3 or 4 levels of temperature checks as you get dropped off in front of your campus building. Then you go through security with another temperature check. And then when you walk in your own building, there's a third temperature check. So there's been a lot of controls put and disinfectant everywhere, all elevators, all conference rooms. So a lot of controls put in place in regards to that. Now, outside mainland China, the shift there has kind of been on a country by country basis as the virus has kind of, you know, propagated itself around the world, and Huawei follows local regulations. Okay, so if there is kind of a mandate to work from home, okay, work remotely in a country where the virus was kind of exploding, we kind of followed the guidelines of that country. You know, we were not kind of the, you know, the outlier where all the other companies were working from home, and Huawei in a different country had employees come into the office. So, you know, in that respect, those are some observations of what was done. When it first broke out in Wuhan, however, a lot of people did work from home, okay, because Huawei does have operations and a big research center in Wuhan as well. So, you know, so that's what I can offer in terms of how we've kind of changed and adapted. However, you know, seeing how the world has adapted externally to consumption of mobile financial services, we've been very agile in the sense that we're trying to coordinate and move internally in a horizontal integrated direction, okay, and work more closely together across individual divisions. There's still a lot of work to be done there. You know, in terms of skills, capabilities, and additions to staff and AI and data management and data sharing across silos. Okay, that needs to happen. More enterprise architects, so things of this nature. But, you know, we've got a lot of capabilities in terms of technology that's open and snaps together from an integration perspective because it's open source technology. So that's a plus, okay? But the culture side, the capability side, and working out of divisional silos, that work still needs to be done, so.
Thank you very much. We have a few minutes left, I think 4 right now. So I will ask a question to Monica and you, Rizwan, at the same time. So from top to down, how did you see leadership, but also employee adoption of the new normal in the companies, and how to continue to be super efficient in the BAU, even if it's working from home or working remotely from the office? Maybe we can start with you, Monica, in 1 or 2 minutes, and after that you can go to Rizwan for 1 or 2 minutes as well. Thank you.
I think working remotely has become the new normal, but we all have adopted to being more communicative and therefore being able to manage better both time as well as organization in terms of meetings. And I think that has led to the enormous use of both tools as well as the ability to share and communicate a lot more than we used to earlier. But I'd like to touch on one thing which I think we have not covered on the panel, which is about employee well-being and the entire dependence that we've always had on face-to-face communication and meetings. As we've become more online, but at the same time not having the ability to be face-to-face, it's led to a massive need to also be there for each other, both on the business development side as well as on customer management, and also on employee well-being and upskilling employees into what will be some challenges that we face right after we actually get into the new normal. And this has led to a massive rate of adoption for us in terms of digital campaigns all across the company for education and upskilling exercises, because there are new technology needs that have been identified that didn't exist before. Therefore, making sure that employees have a 360 view of the changes that are happening, but at the same time are able to future-proof themselves in terms of their own personal development, but also provide the company the opportunity to move into these different directions. And I think that has been an extremely important challenge earlier, but it's been accelerated because of COVID-19.
Yeah, thanks, Monica. I think that's a very great point. I just want to simplify it into two. As far as COVID-19, I think there's an impact on strategic and tactical. On strategic, a lot of companies actually need to pivot their business model. And this is where they need to identify and prioritize key element and core elements in terms of what needs to be done. Because prior to COVID-19, I think a lot of company doesn't realize that there's a lot of excess fat in terms of how the business is being run. But COVID-19 has actually, like what Warren Buffett said is, when the tide actually leave the shore, then you can see who's actually wearing the pants or not. So then during COVID-19, you can see a lot of company prioritizing strategically and tactically in terms of how actually they're going to survive and optimize their resources. And the other impact is in terms of working from home. When the pandemic started, there's a lot of requirement for a lot of people to work from home. So the ratio maybe is around 90% to 10%, where William probably is the 10% who's still staying in the office, but 90% of the staff actually are at home. But now a lot of government has allowed offices to open, school to open. The new norm is the work from home and work on premise has become 50-50. And this is really a strain on the infrastructure, on the network, and also on behavior, because working from home is definitely not for everybody. And I agree with Monica in terms of employees' well-being. This is something that we need to look at very seriously, because it could have a detrimental impact on the performance of the business and on the P&L if it's not really taken care of or looked at closely. I'll stop there. Thanks.
Thank you very much for all your answers. We have one question from the attendee, and maybe we can give an answer in 30 or 1 minute, 30 seconds or 1 minute per speaker. So the question is about lending, especially to SMEs and consumer, and especially in rural areas where you have an informal non-agricultural sectors, or COVID means higher rate of bad debts. What do you think about it? What are your answers? The floor is free for you to take the mic.
Yeah, I can probably talk about this. So, if you look at lending, the challenge right now bank face is a lot of business are locked down. So what this means is, there's no transactions anymore. If you look at SME lending, how banks make typically in the past, how they make decision is they look at the income of the bank or the cash transactions or the transactions of bank for the last 3 months or 6 months. But if the restaurant has been shut for or only doing only 10% of the restaurant open for extended period of time, then of course the traditional model does not work anymore. So that's bring up the question of how do you lend in this kind of environment. I think that makes we have been talking about alternative credit scoring or new ways of accessing risk for years. I think this is the first time banks have realized it's indeed important to develop that kind of capability. So I think for the banks, how we make lending decision now is we look at alternative data. So for example, instead of looking at the income or cash transaction of a company, and you look at the other things like look at the owners, right? The financial position of owners. Look at what kind of assets do the company own? Do they own a building? Do they own a house? Or do they own the restaurant themselves? Can you use that? The ownership of the company to extend them a loan, right? So I think that and when we talk about alternative data, also if an e-commerce company or SME selling an e-commerce platform, then can you also use the transaction data from the e-commerce platform? For example, how many years have been selling? What's the average monthly transaction before the COVID lockdown? Look into those data to see if you are able to lend based on those. And the same applies to individuals. So people might lose their job or get a pay cut because of the environment, because of downturn. Then what we do is actually we are looking at the person's financial position, not only through income, but also their other financial assets. Life insurance protection, right? Do they have a big, do they own properties? Maybe someone has a few properties. Can you lend them money based on that, right? Instead of they assessing their income. So I think you know, the banks had to look into new ways to assess their risk.
Do we have a second point of view here or a second answer?
Yeah. I
Thank
just
you.
want to add to that. I think what has also happened is I saw an intervention by government policies where they allow moratorium on repayment of loans. So that actually gave some relief to both parties in terms of the consumer not having to pay the full amount during the moratorium period, or at least no interest is paid at that point of time, as well as helping the SMEs getting back onto their business by providing them or connecting them to ensuring that they are able to provide the connectivity to the consumer. So I think I've seen that being deployed and being implemented by many governments, especially in the ASEAN region. And I think that focus, that has helped to improve the economic situation and hopefully facilitate a recovery faster compared to others. And this is where as I said earlier, government need to also understand the usage of AI and big data, because this is really, really important for them to make a very targeted and tactical decision, and not just making decision out of like how they did it before. So I think AI and big data would be very, very important for not just us, but for the government as well as other stakeholders to make the right decision going forward. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we reached the end of this panel discussion. So I would like to thank the four of you for this very fruitful session and great insight. And I would like also to thank the organizer and FinStep Asia for giving us the opportunity to be here and discuss about that very exciting topic. So thanks everyone to join us on this panel discussion. We hope that you all enjoy it and have a nice day.